The Houston Texans took 4 players during day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Iowa State wide receiver Jaden Higgins, Minnesota tackle Arante Ursery, Iowa State wide receiver Jaylen Noel, and USC cornerback Jaylin Smith. Let's talk about him. I'm Paul Gallant, and this is the Gallant Says podcast.
A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
Paul Gallant's wondering the same things a lot of people are.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard the Gallant Says podcast. It is Friday night, April 25th, live on YouTube at Paul Gallant. Please like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're a first-time stumbler upon her on Twitch at Gallant Says. Give me a sub on X and Twitter at Gallant Says, on Instagram at Sports Gallant, and on Facebook at Paul Gallant Sports. Generally, we air Monday through Friday around 4 p.m. Central Time. But this week, we have been airing after very many major Houston sporting events, whether they be the Rockets and the Warriors in their first-round series, or the Houston Texans in the NFL Draft. Yesterday, they did nothing. Today, they made 4 moves. It's also available after the fact wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. If you ever want to cut me off mid-thought, you should be watching this on YouTube. Super chat me, baby, and I'll play this.
Paul, stop talking. Listen.
That's former Houston Texans left guard Wade Smith telling me to shut up once in the middle of a segment over on the Texans flagship. I will, though, eventually get to your comments. What up, Chris House? He writes W. I guess he thinks that the Houston Texans had a W draft class. He says we drafted 2 wide receivers. Oh, my God. Yes, they drafted a tackle, too, and a cornerback. So the first pick that the Houston Texans made after that trade yesterday with the New York Giants, where they traded back from pick 25, the Giants take quarterback Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. So the Texans end up getting 3 picks in return for that, a second and a third-round pick for today's day 2, and a third-round pick next year. So they had the second pick on the board, and if you paid attention to what Nick Caserio said during his press conference after Monday, where the Texans did nothing, a remarkably relaxed and perhaps even cocky Caserio said that the guy that they originally wanted to pick at 25 was still there. Is that Jaden Higgins? I don't know. Who is Jaden Higgins? Jaden Higgins went to Iowa State, same school as Xavier Hutchinson, which was a fairly important factor in him being selected by the Texans, playing for head coach Matt Campbell, who it seems Nick Caserio has a pretty good relationship with. Also, as pointed out by Landry Locker on X before these picks went down, Nick Caley, the Texans offensive coordinator, has a relationship with Matt Campbell, the head coach of Iowa State, that goes back quite some time. But Jaden Higgins is a 6'4", 214-pound, Nico Collins-sized wide receiver. I'm taking a look at all the metrics on NFL.com. He ran a 4.47 40-yard dash, if you care about any of that jazz. He started off his career at Eastern Kentucky. He played there his first 2 seasons. Then he ultimately transferred to Iowa State, and the guy clearly over time has seriously improved, which is something that both D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio think is important to see. They like being able to coach up players. It's not just about bringing in a guy who's a finished product. No, you are coaching these guys up. You're trying to make them develop over time, and sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Like with Nico Collins, who apparently is the closest comparison to Jaden Higgins. He was all Big 12 his first season in the Big 12. He was third team All-American and second team all Big 12 this past year. I'm going to read my buddy Lance Zierlein's write-up on him. If you were paying attention to the radio show side of things, we would very often just read Lance Zierlein's write-ups and put guys on our big board entirely based off of how unintentionally erotic some of the language was, because I really do think that when it comes to this time of year, the only people that you really should trust are the organizations that know what they're doing, and even then, it's a bit of a crapshoot. It's a 50-50 deal. Per Lance Zierlein, he is a big inside-outside wideout with modest athletic attributes, but outstanding ball skills that make him a projectable NFL prospect. He needs a more limited route tree, but can operate on all three levels in the right scheme. Smooth, but physical in his routes, and does a nice job of creating pockets of separation with force and strength. He has mismatched qualities from the slot, with body control and a catch radius that makes him a menace on jump balls downfield. He won't outrun cornerbacks and has nothing special after the catch. Well, he is a little bit different than Nico Collins on that front, but his size, ball skills, and competitiveness create a profile of production as a future contributor in three wide receiver sets. His strengths: big-bodied wideout with a wingspan over 6'7", purposeful drives phase, disguises comebacks and stops. He runs routes with smooth strides and good balance. Effective use of size to physically separate at breaks. Big-time talent to track and position himself on deep balls and fades. Competes for the catch. Hands are natural, soft, and sudden, but he's unable to sink his hips for sudden stops and sharp cuts in his route. Will need to operate with a limited route tree. No second gear to prevent corners from closing distance. Finds himself in a high number of contested catches. Below average run after the catch talent in smaller spaces. So sounds like he is a big possession wide receiver. No, nothing wrong with that. Houston Texans could have used anyone else, big-bodied, that could be open even when they're not open, for CJ Stroud last year. And for all those people who want the Texans to draft as many wide receivers as they possibly can, that's what the Texans did today. They didn't get just one, they got two. So Jaden Higgins, the first pick off the board. Later on, the Texans made a trade. They traded with the Las Vegas Raiders. They sent pick 58 and pick 99, a second rounder, and a third rounder to the Las Vegas Raiders to move up from 58 to 48. Nick Caserio loves trading. This is his 14th all-time trade up, his 25th NFL Draft Day trade. He'll make another one later. We'll get to it. And with that pick, the Texans took Aiereontae Ursery out of Minnesota, who I'm told has quite the backstory. Since we're doing this right after the draft is done, I'm going to put a little more work into studying up these guys over the weekend. We'll talk more about them on my radio show, noon to 3 on ESPN Houston. So really right now I am operating in the dark as far as who these prospects are. But Aiereontae Ursery, definitely a guy at a position of need. Take a look at this guy's size. He is 6'6". Crikey. 331 pounds. He started 13 games his first year as a starter in 2022. He was honorable mention All Big Ten. Started 13 games the next season, 12 games his past season, and it was because he didn't play in the bowl game. So this is a guy who's clearly durable. He's played in just about every single game he possibly could have played in college. Interesting comparison by Lance Zierlein, who compares him to Marcus Cannon, who is someone that Nick Caserio is very familiar with his time back with the New England Patriots. He is a 3-year starter at left tackle with good power. Ersery is not a natural bender, which creates disadvantages with leverage and when attempting to mirror moving fronts. Well-versed in Minnesota's outside zone attack, might be more consistent in power inside zone and hat-on-hat matchups. Huge, but he sets with good quickness to the rush, using his length and hand strength to gather it or lock it out. His anchor is derived from his upper half, which opens him to hand counters. Ersery has the potential to become an average starting tackle on the right side, but his success will be tied to matchups across from him. Okay, so a right tackle. What does that mean for the rest of the Texans' offensive line? Means that there's a very good chance that Titus Howard is moving to left guard. I would imagine that until further notice, and Nick Caserio even said this in his press conference after the draft was done, This guy is a tackle. He's not a guard. Could he move to guard at some point down the line? Sure. Right now, tackle. His strengths per Lance Zierlein: mass of humanity, broad chest, long arms, good initial slide, quickness and depth gain on diagonal sets, fires direct jabs, pow, pow, that jolt the rusher and slow his charge. Strong, sticky hands keep rusher from escaping once he's in the web. Patient base blocker who typically centers up his initial strike, engages in line with consistent base width and body control. He makes well-timed movements on combo blocks. His weaknesses: limited knee bend, upright posture. Target point for pass punch, can drift too high on opponent's frame. Damn, Lance, what the fuck does any of this mean? Tight hips limit his ability to open and recover when beaten. Below average pop on contact and gallop step and down blocks. Could struggle getting to lateral landmarks on NFL stretch plays. So he's huge. He's a big, big dude at tackle. The Texans needed offensive linemen, and this is probably the highest rated guy that they had on their board, given the fact that they traded up 10 picks to go and get him. They maybe were a little bit nervous that there wouldn't be any offensive linemen that they really liked if they continued to wait and wait and wait. Obviously, they didn't pick anybody on Thursday. For those who don't know, they actually did try to trade up to pick number 12 with the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys ultimately, they took Tyler Booker, the guy from Alabama who has been described as the Will Anderson of Alabama's offense. I really wanted him when I heard that. Apparently, the Cowboys, they believe that Nick Caserio lowballed them. Good. Lowball them. See if they accept the deal. You never know if the first offer that you make is going to be able to get things done. Take a look at the Atlanta Falcons, for God's sakes, and how dumb many believe them to be after that crazy trade that they had yesterday with the Los Angeles Rams. So it's a guy that, once again, PJ Fleck, the head coach at Minnesota, the Texans seem to have a good deal of familiarity with. And this is something that is important. It's important from the high school to college level. College football coaches back in the day, the relationships with certain high school football coaches would generally get an honest feel for whether or not a guy is good or isn't. Obviously, it's one thing for a coach to talk up his player, but when a coach is actually honest about his player, maybe a program rewards that school, whether it's a high school or a college, with a draft pick or a scholarship. If you trust the person who's giving you the scouting report, you're scratching their back a little bit by putting one of their players on your college program if you're a high school coach, or if you're doing the same for a college program with an NFL team. And relationships are a huge part of this industry, especially when the NFL draft is such a crapshoot. So something we heard from Nick Caserio after the draft, singling out both Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell and Minnesota head coach PJ Fleck, is that those guys gave pretty good reviews of these players. Let's read some comments here on YouTube at Paul Gallant, on Twitch at Gallant Says, Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports, on Instagram at Sports Gallant, on X at Gallant Says. Riley TD 2000 says, I like the tackle that we got. Todd the Show says, I am here to support even in my pain. Todd the Show, for those who don't know, a regular listener of the Paul Gallant Show on ESPN 97.5, 92.5, and on YouTube at ESPN Houston, on Twitch at ESPN 975. A massive Shedeur Sanders fan. And yeah, also a Giants fan. They took Jackson Dart, and Shedeur Sanders somehow has not been selected tonight. My mind has been blown by this. I don't know that I was in love with Shedeur Sanders as a college prospect. He was 13-12 as a starter. But do I think he is such an asshole that he didn't deserve to be taken for the first 4 rounds of the NFL draft, first 3 rounds of the NFL draft? I mean, he's going to be a 4th round pick. And at one point, people were talking about him as a potential top 10, top 15 pick. Insane how far he has fallen. It does smell like collusion, just a little bit. Like all the teams in the league are like, yeah, we want to punish him. But why? Because he was arrogant in a couple of interviews. It's weird. Very strange. And now, as a backup quarterback goes, yeah, he'd be rather distracting. That's for sure. So we'll see if he keeps on falling. But sorry about that, Todd the Show. Let's keep on looking through the prospects because some commenters want me to talk about the next player that the Houston Texans took. They waited until the 79th pick overall, a third-round pick, and took another Iowa State wide receiver. And their second guy from Kansas City, Missouri, Arante Ursery, was the first. Jaylen Noel, a 5'10", 194-pound receiver, the second. For those who don't know, he's in the 91st percentile per NFL.com when it comes to athleticism, which is pretty cool to see. He ran a 4.39 40, also very impressive, and has quite the vertical. He was a very good kick returner in college and also pretty damn good as a receiver. In terms of total yards, he was 9th in all of college football with 1,194 receiving yards. Definitely a slot guy. Here is the write-up per Lance Zierlein. Noel's blend of receiving and return talent sounds a lot like Tank Dell, who, by the way, the Texans drafted in the 3rd round. And, of course, this is a guy who also played for Matt Campbell. Could carry more sway with teams given the league's new kickoff rules in 2024. That's right, the kickoffs, if it's a touchback, now goes to the 35. I still am a little skeptical that teams are just going to try to kick the ball off and not kick it out the back of the end zone, but we'll see. I hope it livens it up a little bit. People were still kicking it out of the end zone when it went to the 30. He's primarily a slot receiver, but has enough size and speed to kick outside in a pinch. His routes can be a little unfocused, but that's correctable with coaching. What can't be coached is his consistent play speed. He can accelerate and separate from turns and stems and tends to uncover on cross-country routes. What the fuck does that mean? Sorry, Lance. The catch focus can be inconsistent, but he is willing to mix it up in the middle of the field and is a natural after the ball is in his hands. Noel's upside and punt kick return value could make him a day 2 pick, that's what he was, with the potential to develop into a starter. So this is a guy who probably at first is going to be a kick returner, punt returner, and then I would imagine, since Christian Kirk is the guy that the Texans brought in this offseason as via trade, or was it via trade? Was it via free agency? Honestly, I forget off the top of my head. But Christian Kirk is the Texans slot receiver right now. Christian Kirk is going to be getting the majority of those reps. He is going to be in the spot where Stephon Diggs was, I would imagine, from time to time too. And look, I mean, who knows where everyone's going to line up, but there is a lot of competition in this Texans wide receiver room now. You have Nico Collins already, one of the best receivers in the league. You have Christian Kirk. That's a pretty good 1-2 tandem to start. You draft Jaden Higgins at the top of the 2nd round. You draft Jaylen Noel. You already have Xavier Hutchinson, who has contributed before. I think John Mechie is probably the odd man out at this moment in time. And there are some other wide receivers that are in the room as well. But those are your top 5. 3 of them are going to be Iowa State guys, and 2 of them, Nico Collins and Christian Kirk. More write-up from Lance Zierlein. Strengths of Jaylen Noel. Good short area burst. Ooh. To elude press defenders. Quick into play pace. Makes him hard to keep up with. Accelerates and separates at the route stem. Willing to work into the teeth of the defense. Quality run after catch talent to help move the chains. Legitimate kick and punt return value with plus vision. Weaknesses: he lacks length and has smaller hands, can be unfocused and frenetic getting through patterns, uses excessive settle steps to gather and open on hooks, drifts on speed turns, allows corners to undercut him. Focus drops have popped up throughout his career. We'll see what he does, but again, I think that Noel projects as the returner for this coming season. Dameon Pierce, you got a competitor when it comes to kick returner, but no competitors yet as far as running backs for Dameon Pierce. Couple of comments that we will read. World of Warcraft Spartacus says, I love the Noel pick, but it makes me very worried about Tank Dell's future. You should be worried. I mean, that was a devastating injury that he suffered. It was all his ligaments. And I think it was his kneecap there too, Chris G comments, I like the picks, especially wide receiver. With the devastating Tank Dell injury, I don't believe he'll ever be the same. Oh, God, it really sucks to think that. Saw him at Toyota Center for Rockets Warriors game 1. We needed wide receivers to help Nico. More comments here. This is from Brandon Halam. A couple of guys talking about tackles. Ersery was 0.01 seconds and 0.5 inches from being part of an elite group that only Will Campbell, Armand Membu, Trent Williams, and Tristan Warpsar are part of historically. Offensive tackles over 315 pounds with a sub-5 second 40 and a 30-plus inch vertical. Damn. Did you know that? I don't know if I can still run a sub-540, but it wasn't that long ago that I could run a sub-540. Paul, what did you run in high school? Everyone says that they ran a 4.6 in high school. Everyone also is full of shit. Everyone's full of shit. No one ran a 4.6. I probably at my fastest ran like a 4.77 or something like that. But your boy had the open field speed, you know? He did. Yes, he did. What a legend. Paul Gallant, flag football hero. High school football hero at a school called Shorecrest Preparatory School. Paul, shut the fuck up. No one cares.
Paul, stop talking. Listen.
Fine. I'll shut up, okay? Brandon Hallam continues saying that Aiereontae Ursery from Minnesota, their second round pick, ran a sub 540 at 331 pounds. Yeah, he's a big fucker. 100%. Brandon Hallam comments also, Braxton Berrios competition. Yes, the significant other of TikTok's It Girl, strong, independent woman, Alex Earl. Yep. I'm not expecting that much out of Braxton Berrios, to be perfectly honest. The Texans brought in a couple of, who's that guy they brought in from the Texans? Texans sign wide receiver from Chiefs. Sorry, his name is eluding me right now. Justin Watson, the guy who dropped the wide open touchdown pass in Texans Chiefs in that game in December. There's also Jared Wayne, who's, of course, the guy who ran in the wrong spot, and I feel bad for Jared Wayne, ultimately accidentally hurt Tank Dell. So those are some other receivers that'll be competing. We have some people asking questions. Instagram at HJSII_ on Instagram at Sports Gallant asks, why do you think Shedeur Sanders hasn't been picked up? Do you think it's because of his dad? I think it's just for a quarterback that clearly wasn't blowing the NFL scouting community's socks off. It's a lot of noise to bring in. And now that's what's really tricky. Had he gone in the first round, and I am surprised that the Saints didn't take him. I mean, the quarterbacks that went off the board most recently, that's really what has me confused. I get Cam Ward going ahead of him. I get Jackson Dart to a degree going ahead of him, but Jackson Dart is still the same guy that had a meltdown against Florida that I watched. I root for the Florida Gators, and he was crying on the sideline, and like the Giants are looking at that guy to turn the program around. Tyler, is it Schuff? I had never heard of this guy from Louisville that went 8th in the second round to the Saints. Tyler Schuff, I don't know. I see words. I feel the need to phonetically pronounce them correctly. Should be, maybe it's Tyler Show. I don't know. But anyway, is that guy better than Shedeur Sanders? I don't know about that. When Jalen Milroe, with the 28th pick of the third round, went to the Seahawks, that's when I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Dylan Gabriel from Oregon to the Browns, I can kind of see that. Jalen Milroe being selected ahead of Shedeur Sanders is really a head-scratcher. And listen, nothing against Jalen Milroe, but I've watched him play in big games, and the guy isn't a very good thrower of the football. He's great at running it, and maybe that's why Felipe Lamas on Instagram at Sports Gallant, the Seahawks brought him in as some sort of a gadget player, an alternative to Sam Darnold. The Darnold signing, I think, is, to be frank, a fucking bad move. I tell any Seahawks fan that. I'd rather have Geno Smith than Sam Darnold. I think if you watch Sam Darnold last year, especially towards the end and how long he holds on to the football, I think Seattle's in for a long year. You know? And one more pick the Houston Texans made before wrapping things up. They made one last trade. They moved up from pick 99, I think. Were they at 99? Maybe it was 97. but they traded pick 102 in the 4th round and pick number 142 in the 5th round to move up to pick 97, which is a 3rd-round pick, and they selected USC cornerback Jaylin Smith. Jaylin Smith, for those who don't know, played at Southern California, and his NFL.com draft profile doesn't exactly rave about him. He was a projected 6 to 7 round pick. Here's what is written about him. 3-year starter with measurables and ball production that could leave teams lukewarm on his NFL prospects. Smith plays with a narrow back pedal, glitchy transitions, and sluggish closing bursts from off-man coverage. He is much clingier from press man. He might not have the play strength, length, or top-end speed to be reliable on an outside island. The 2024 tape was better, offers some inside-outside flexibility, but he might be fighting for a roster spot throughout his career. Has experience at safety, nickel, and outside corner spots. Patient but ready when matching release from press. Clinging in press man coverage thanks to body control and route feel. Maintains positioning and activity levels when running with deep routes. Tackle technique and finishes were much improved in 2024. Saw heavy involvement as a gunner, interesting, and jammer on punts. Lacks prototypical NFL measurables, though, as far as weaknesses and speed for his position. Upright back pedal leads to hitches in his transition. Quick but inefficient footwork when recovering to the route. Missing instincts and closing bursts to contest at a high rate. Big targets will beat him for catches above the rim. And he lacks play strength to be anything more than a drag-down tackler. Not a great review of Jaylin Smith. However, something to keep in mind, he went to USC, so did Kalen Bullock. In fact, Kalen Bullock was apparently watching the NFL draft with Jaylin Smith. So is there a theme here? Is there a theme to what the Texans did on day 2 of the 2025 NFL draft? They pushed back on the idea that they draft for need. Nick seemed annoyed when somebody asked, hey, why'd you make the decisions that you did? And went on another tangent about how I don't even know what drafting for need means. And it was kind of amusing to see it. He was spicy at the podium today, especially when it came to Jaden Higgins. With Jaden Higgins, he asked twice, like, I mean, watch the guy play. And he seemed a little pissy while he was saying it. It wasn't like anyone was second-guessing him. I think people were just asking about it, like, hey, why'd you pick him? Go watch him play. No, yeah, but why did you pick him? Watch him play. Oh, okay, fine, Nick, relax. But I think that the reason the Texans made the picks that they did, it's something that Nick Caserio brought up in the press conference. They had a great deal of familiarity with a lot of these prospects due to the relationships that they have with some of their coaches. At Iowa State, you have now 3 wide receivers from that program who were coached under Matt Campbell. You have a guy out of Minnesota who's a monster of a human being that I'm sure PJ Fleck said a lot of complimentary things about. The Texans do care about good dudes. And if you're hearing things from people you trust, Matt Campbell at Iowa State or PJ Fleck at Minnesota, you're going to feel pretty good about bringing in guys like this. And with Jaylin Smith, I'm sure Kalen Bullock had said some favorable things, but the fact that they've seen guys like Kalen Bullock playing for USC, maybe not looking so good out there, and thinking to themselves, nope, he's still around, let's trade up for him, whether as a special teamer, because, look, it's going to be tough for him to get on the field given how much depth the Texans have in the secondary. And it's also interesting the Texans traded up to get a guy in the secondary given the depth that they have. But they clearly liked him, and I'm sure that the familiarity was a reason. That's the theme of the 2025 NFL Draft. Some more comments here. World of Warcraft Spartacus says, Nick looked like he was ready to throw some hands. Yes, he did. It's a pretty amusing way to wrap up that press conference. So, what's next for the Houston Texans? How many draft picks do they have next? Let me take a look. I had it in front of me for just a moment ago, and now all of a sudden, of course, it leaves. It vanishes. But they're not going to be making a lot of picks tomorrow that the football casuals are going to care about. You know, if you are a football junkie, go ahead, have at it. Watch round 6. But the Texans have 3 picks in round 6. Maybe they trade up into round 5 given the amount of picks that they have in round 6. They have the 3rd, 11th, and 40th pick of round 6. But they're going to be picking late in the afternoon tomorrow and then pick 25 and pick 39. As always, when I look at the draft, given that Nick Caserio says we don't draft for need, we're going to draft best player available every single time, I'm going to take him at his word. And given what the Texans have done under Nick Caserio in the draft, a pretty damn good record to this point. As I've said before, I trust them. I trust this organization. Can't believe I'm saying this. I'm sure you feel the same exact way, but I trust them. We will see if the picks that they make end up making an impact in year one. The hope is that the receivers and Aiereontae Ursery can do that. I'm skeptical that the corner Jaylin Smith will do that. But the picks, round 2, pick 34 overall, Jaden Higgins, a wide receiver from Iowa State. Round 2, pick 16, the 48th pick overall, Arante Ursery from Minnesota. Round 3, pick 15, the 79th overall, Jaylen Noel, a wide receiver from Iowa State. And round 3, pick 33, 97 overall, Jaylin Smith, a cornerback from USC. These are the newest Houston Texans. Appreciate y'all staying up late with me tonight. Hope you're having a good Friday. You can get this bad boy live on YouTube. Like this video and subscribe. 4 p.m. Central Time on weekdays. On Twitch or on X and Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook. The Twitch is at Gallant Says. Give me a sub if you're a Twitcher. On X and Twitter at Gallant Says. Instagram, the handle is at Sports Gallant. Give me a follow there. You'll see some of the short clips. I also have TikToks where I post the short clips from this show. At Gallant Says is that. Facebook, it's at Paul Gallant Sports. We're trying to make the Facebook a little more active. I'll admit, whenever I go on Facebook these days, I immediately leave. It's also available after the fact wherever you get your podcast. So if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review me on Apple and Spotify. I'm going to be on the road tomorrow. We will see if I can find a place to do a post-game show for Rockets Warriors. That ought to be fun. Jimmy Butler's status with a glute muscle contusion from what we thought was a pelvic contusion has his status in jeopardy. There's some videos on my YouTube channel that you can watch at Paul Gallant if you want to get yourself hyped up for Rockets Warriors Game 3. We talked a lot about that today and yesterday. Until the next time we do this, which will probably be at some point tomorrow evening, a quick one talking about Rockets and Warriors Game 3 in San Francisco. I am merely Paul Gallant. So long, farewell, and have yourselves a wonderful rest of your Friday evening, early Saturday morning, and weekend. Peace!